First time I heard the muster alarm, I thought it was coming from another berth. It was after midnight, the hour when the harbor settles into a low mechanical hush. Diesel engines ticking as they cool, ropes creaking against damp pilings, water slapping softly at steel hulls. Fog had rolled in off the channel and swallowed the far cranes, leaving only pale rings of light where the flood lamps fought to push it back. I was halfway through my patrol log when a warped voice drifted across the water. All hands! All hands! Report for muster!" It sounded old. Not like the modern PA systems on the active ships, but like a recording played through worn speakers. The kind of voice you'd expect to hear in a black and white training film. I leaned out of the guard shack window, listening. The call came again, louder this time, and I realized it wasn't coming from any of the working docks. It was coming from Berth 9, from the Maribel. The Maribel had been decommissioned for 2 years. No power, no crew, no maintenance. Just a rusting cargo ship waiting its turn to be stripped for scrap. We were told never to board it without clearance and never to lower the gangway. But through the fog, I could see the gangway hanging down, wet and glistening under my flashlight beam. My radio hissed when I tried harbor ops, just static. Then the PA changed. "Security Officer Hale," the voice said calmly. "Report to the bridge." My stomach tightened. No one on that ship should have known my name. I told myself it had to be a prank, some trespasser messing with old systems, some bad wiring picking up my radio ID. Still, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the cold. As I crossed the pier, the fog thickened and the Maribel loomed larger, its hull swallowing light. The gangway creaked slightly as I touched it. The metal was warm, like someone had just walked up it. Behind me, the muster alarm kept calling, and against every instinct I had, I started climbing. The air changed the moment I stepped onto the deck. It wasn't the cold, salty night air anymore. It was warmer, stale, like the inside of a warehouse that hadn't been opened in years but still remembered people. The door into the superstructure was already unlatched. Before I touched it, the corridor lights inside flickered on, one by one, stretching away into the ship like a waking spine. I hadn't even crossed the threshold yet, and the Maribel was already turning itself on for me. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Old coffee, oil, and something faintly sweet, like cheap cologne soaked into fabric and never fully washing out. My flashlight beam swept across the deck. Footprints. Not fresh puddles, not muddy tracks, just dark impressions in the thin layer of moisture. Heavy work boots with deep tread. They led straight from the gangway to the open door. Somewhere above me, metal rang softly. Then again. Footsteps. Not one set, several, all moving at the same pace. I followed the prints inside, my boots suddenly sounding too loud in the narrow corridor. The walls were lined with faded safety posters, corners peeling, warning about drills that no one had run in years. The footsteps grew clearer. Then I saw someone standing at the end of the hall, a man in a dark blue coverall, reflective strips dull with age, cap pulled low. For a second, I felt a rush of relief. Someone living, someone I could yell at. Then he lifted his head. His eyes caught my light and reflected it back like glass. He didn't speak, just raised his hand and pointed deeper into the ship. More figures filled the hallway behind me, men and women in outdated uniforms, some soaked, some with bandages, some with blackened sleeves like they'd been pulled from smoke. They walked past me in quiet lines, boots falling into the same steady rhythm. The PA crackled overhead. "Crew to muster, 5 minutes." No one argued. No one hesitated. They all knew exactly where they were going. And somehow, so did I. At the end of the corridor, the stairs to the bridge waited, and every footstep was heading that way. The bridge was already lit when we reached the top of the stairs. Not bright, but warm, like someone had left the lights on low all night. The control screens were dark, but the old analog gauges all twitched just above zero, needles quivering like the ship was breathing in shallow, nervous breaths. A man stood at the center of the bridge with his back to us, hands clasped behind him. His uniform jacket was too clean, too crisp for a ship that hadn't sailed in years. When he turned, his face looked almost right and completely wrong at the same time. Like it had been shaped from memory instead of flesh. His eyes were the same glassy reflection I'd seen in the corridor. He surveyed the lines of crew, then let his gaze settle on me. "Security Officer Hale," he said calmly. "You've returned." "I've never been here," I whispered. He blinked, slow and patient. "That is not what the record indicates." On the captain's table, a clipboard rested beneath the overhead light. The muster sheet was already filled out. Dates, positions, signatures. The top line showed tomorrow's date. Halfway down the list, next to Security Liaison, was my name, already signed. My hand cramped, like it remembered writing it. "We cannot depart," the captain said, "until the crew is complete." He began calling names. Each response came back layered, like more than one voice speaking through the same mouth. When he reached my line, he looked directly at me. "Report." My mouth moved before I could stop it. "Present." The word echoed across the bridge. Deep in the hull, something answered. The ship shuddered, not violently, but eagerly. Outside the windows, deck lights flared to life, cutting through the fog. Somewhere below, engines coughed and turned. The captain smiled. "Good," he said. "Prepare to cast off." I don't remember deciding to run. One second I was standing in line with the crew, the next I was pushing through bodies that felt solid and wrong, like cold rubber stretched over bone. Hands reached for my arms, not violent, not frantic, just firm, like coworkers trying to pull someone back into position before they made a mistake. A voice cut through the bridge, sharper now. "Return to position!" Red lights pulsed along the ceiling, not emergency lighting, warning. I tore down the stairs, boots slamming, breath tearing at my throat. The ship groaned around me, metal shifting like it was waking from a long sleep. At the bottom of the corridor, the man with the glassy eyes stood waiting. For a heartbeat, I thought he was there to stop me. Instead, he lifted his hand and pointed to the door, to the deck. I didn't slow down. Cold air and fog hit me as I burst outside. The muster alarm howled behind me, echoing across the harbor. The gangway was rising. Slow, steady hydraulics lifting it inch by inch, turning it into a steep metal slope. I grabbed the rail and slid, boots skidding, sparks jumping where my heel scraped. My palm tore on the grating and pain flashed white hot, but I didn't let go. The PA softened, almost pleading. "You signed on." The pier rushed up. I jumped. I hit the boards hard, rolled, then scrambled up just as the gangway cleared the edge of the pier. Behind me, ropes slipped free from the bollards. Not snapped, untied. The Maribel drifted back from the dock, fog curling around its hull. Through the bridge windows, silhouettes stood shoulder to shoulder, watching. The ship's horn sounded once, low and long. Then it began to turn toward open water, and I realized it was leaving without me. My radio finally crackled to life. "Hale? What the hell just happened over there?" It was Pete, my supervisor. His voice sounded too normal for what I'd just seen. "The ship," I gasped. "It just left the berth by itself." There was a pause, then, carefully, "Hale, you weren't assigned to berth 9 tonight." "That's not possible. I was sitting in the shack. I heard the alarm." Another pause, longer this time. "I've got the old decommissioning file open," Pete said. "Crew manifest, incident reports, everything." My stomach dropped. "Hale, your name is on this list." I stared at the empty water where the Maribel had been. "That can't be right." "Security liaison," Pete continued. "Signed on. 2 years ago." 2 years ago, I hadn't even lived near this harbor. My hand throbbed where the gangway had torn my skin, like it remembered holding a pen. Pete swallowed audibly. "You sure you didn't board that ship before tonight?" I didn't answer. Instead, I looked down at the pier. Wet boot prints crossed the boards, heavy tread, deep heel, leading away from the berth, leading toward my guard shack. The shack door was open. Warm light spilled out onto the pier. The heater clicked on inside, steady and welcoming. Then a familiar voice whispered through the shack's PA system, soft and patient. "All hands, report for muster." Pete was still talking, his voice fading into static, but I couldn't hear him anymore, because the footprints were still moving, and whatever had sailed away on the Maribel hadn't finished its shift with me yet. If you're listening to this on a late shift, if you're alone, watching lights that shouldn't be on or hearing radios that shouldn't be talking back, trust your instincts. Some places don't shut down when the paperwork says they do. Some jobs keep running long after the people are gone. And sometimes, the hardest part isn't getting away. It's realizing you were already on the roster. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Campfire Horror Stories for more long-form horror set in forgotten jobs, empty places, and nights where help doesn't always come when you call for it. And if you've ever worked a shift that felt wrong, drop a comment below. I read every one of them. Because out here, in the quiet places, the night is always hiring.